Fenton, filling in for Kate Nagel, who just had the first half hour of the show. She is racing up to the city, Providence City Plan Commission, who is hearing the big discussion about the proposed 46-story Fane Tower. GoLocal just broke a story a few minutes ago. Friedrich St. Florent, the famous Rhode Island architect who designed the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., just completed an interview with Kate Nagel and announced that he was in favor of this project, says it's really what Providence needs. Take a look at that article, gives a lot of insights into his viewpoint. He is literally one of the most famous architects in the United States and certainly the preeminent one in Rhode Island. With me now is gubernatorial candidate Spencer Dickinson, Democratic candidate, former state legislator. Welcome to GoLocal Live.
Thank you, Josh. Good to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
Thank you for saying my name.
We'll try and
people need to hear it.
We'll try and say it 3 or 4 more times.
Good.
You're running for governor. You announced in the fall. Tell us why you're running for governor.
A lot of people in politics talk about change. I don't think what we need in this state is change. I think what we need is to get back on track. And I have been in and out of politics for many years. I first ran for the legislature when the pay was $300 a year. When I got elected, I had no kids. 8 years later, I had 4, and it was time to move on.
Yep.
I came back again in 2010, served a couple of terms, learned a lot, met some people, found out that things have changed in this state. Maybe change is what we have had.
Yeah.
And it's not the question of going backwards, but we definitely need to get back on track.
So when you talk about these things, talk about what do you see as the number one problem for whomever becomes the governor in January of 2019? What's the number one issue that folks, whoever it is, needs to take on?
Well, I think that, let's say that we don't get a change. There's some things that are going to continue to happen, and I think the number one thing I think probably this wasn't going to be one of my first points, but I think it's a serious problem. For example, we call it the UHIP problem, or Health and Human Services. The state of Rhode Island, combined with the federal government, has spent just about $500 million on a program that doesn't work, and they're barely getting it to work.
It really doesn't work.
And I haven't told you much about my background, not really that important right now, but early in my career I worked for Prudential Insurance in Boston and for Citizens Bank in Providence as a systems analyst programmer. Now that, the machines were different and I was just a kid at the time.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there are ways to do this. And you are not the chief executive of an operation that's failing without going down there and finding out what's going on, setting up or bringing some people in to set up some guideposts and making sure they get met. None of that was done. And now we're hearing, and we've been hearing that for like 16 months, there are 500 coders and flowchart drawers. Now, having done that work, it's kind of hard to visualize. They're not in Cranston. Yeah. They're in India, if they exist at all. I don't think they exist. But the point is that somebody has to start fixing these problems.
You're saying really it's the buck stops with the governor.
And the work hasn't been done. I think the focus has been going out to California and raising a $4 million war chest, going to Chicago and raising a $4 million war chest from the people that want to build a power plant in Burrillville. Yeah. And of course, one of my priorities will be, I don't think that issue's going anywhere because I think the governor's afraid of it. Yeah. And I think she knows that if she lets it continue, that she'll probably lose the election. So she's being quiet, but she was in favor of it and she's been on both sides of it. And one of my reasons for getting in the race was so that I could just say, if I am governor, there will be no fracked gas power plant in Burrillville. And maybe we ought to spend a couple of months talking about why that's true, but why that's a problem. But it is a problem.
Let's talk about UHIP just for a second. I don't want to eat up all the time on UHIP. Deming Sherman was on talking about his role as the special master appointed by the federal court, Will Smith. And he pointed out, which I think we were all dumbfounded, I think everybody watching was dumbfounded, that the application process for becoming eligible for any of the 5 different...
45 pages.
It is a 40-page paper document. And, he said to Kate, I defy you to be able to fill it out. We got a copy of it. The department sent it over to us the next day. And to be honest, you cannot figure out how to fill out this document.
And what customer-friendly organization guided the state towards that system?
It really just makes no sense.
And what governor didn't say, wait a minute, this won't work? It doesn't work. It's not customer friendly. You know, we should have been warned when we saw what happened at the Registry of Motor Vehicles year
Right.
after year after year, and it still isn't working.
Right.
And there's no reason why you can't, and that's the face of Rhode Island, it's the face of government. And when somebody comes here to start a business or
So
bring
let me
their
ask you a
business-
question. Are we too small? You know, it's easy to say, okay, you're the state of California. You can pour in all the resources you need to build a DMV system. We have a fraction of that population. And so the cost structure is different. Or are we just not innovative enough to say, call up Governor Baker and says, hey, your DMV system seems to work. Can we borrow it?
That would be a sensible thing to do. And unless you were maybe trying to spend some money with Hewlett-Packard, who worked on it for years,
Yeah.
Unless your goal is to throw money at somebody, then maybe you would do that. Or go to Virginia and say, can we buy your program?
Yeah.
That's what banks do.
So let's talk about some of the issues facing Rhode Island. Yeah, what are the three biggest challenges for Rhode Islanders today?
Individual Rhode Islanders, well, you know, in a lot of ways things are good, except we have to realize that there are business cycles.
Yeah.
The cycle is going up, but we have to be careful because we're the first into the problem and the last out, and we need to change that. And I think you know, a lot of us are comfortable, but I think that probably, from the governor's point of view, we have the real super administrative issues like UHIP, and you know, don't forget the Registry of Motor Vehicles. Those are customer service issues. We have business development issues. Amazon came here, maybe looked at a picture of the fleet building, the Superman building covered with mirrors stuck all over it.
Right.
Didn't make any sense to them. But the real problem that they had was, I think, they wanted to bring 50,000 employees. I haven't written Amazon off yet. I think, you know, we still might be able to get them to change their mind. But part of the problem is we are building in Rhode Island 1,100 homes a year. At our best year that I can remember in the past, it was like a couple thousand and some.
Yeah.
But you know, it needs to be 3,500 or more. And when you do that, number one, it's the Cardi factor. You're going to sell some mattresses.
Yeah, right.
And you're going to sell some dishwashers. But more important than that, you're going to put some people to work learning the trade of construction, and also getting off whatever program that they need now, that they're on now, because they don't have a job.
I thought one of the most insightful things any Rhode Island business person has said on GoLocal Live was Benny's CEO, Arthur Bromberg, announced on Friday they were closing. On Monday, he was on with me on our Business Monday show, and he said, listen, I started with the company when I was 17 years old putting together bikes. It was 50 years ago. We had, I think, 3 Benny's stores, something like that, and there were 1 million people in Rhode Island. Well, it's 50 years later, and we have 1 million people in Rhode Island. Don't we just have straight up a population problem? It's hard to get an economic growth when your population is older and smaller almost every year.
One of the problems is that, and this is something that's going to be a tough issue, the cities and towns are discouraging growth.
Yeah.
As a builder, I know that all too well, and we're going to have to make some decisions. The cities and towns are encouraging, you got to be over 58, or you can't buy a lot that's under 200,000. And there's no home for sale for, say, under 400,000 in South Kingstown or Cumberland or West Warwick, or the average. People can't. Number one, retired people can't move to a smaller home. Young people can't buy a new home. People from the city can't move south or east or west to the suburbs.
Forget
and
the east
people
side
out
of
state
Providence.
can't
Yeah.
come here.
Well,
So-
what we're getting on the east side of Providence is Boston people, a lot of Boston people who will come down, and a house that used to be just a couple years ago, 3 years ago, $400,000 is now selling for $700,000.
Well, you know, that's good for the east side. I mean, you know, somebody's
Or not,
benefiting from it.
because other people who can't match those salaries because they've got a Boston salary, not a Providence salary.
But the thing is, and I know, and we'll do depositions if necessary, but the building departments, the building inspectors discourage builders. They drag out the process, and not only that, they go to a seminar at state level to learn how to do this.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised if there's a housing shortage and your schools are half full. And I don't know, you know, the town manager says, hey, I just pulled a smart move. Everybody in this development is going to be over 58 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, except guess what? How about all those empty school buildings? Is that really the future of your community? I don't think it is. And that million people you're talking about, that's going to be less than 1 million, and we're going to lose a congressman.
Well, I think we're going to lose a congressman. Kids Count has the numbers, and I'm not wildly comfortable with how they do their analysis. but because they're using censuses and survey data mixed together. But in 2000, according to the 2000 census, there's about 260,000 children in Rhode Island, and now it's about 210,000 children in Rhode Island.
Not a good trend.
Not a good trend at all.
So we need, it might not be Amazon, but we need people to come here, we need people to stay here, and the people that stay here, you know, I got 4 kids, 3 of them live out of state.
So you've done your job, right? None of this 1.5 children, you've been a 4 guy.
My kids, I got 4 kids, they're grown up, they're out of college, they have
How
kids.
many live in Rhode Island?
One of my kids lives in Rhode Island, and until recently, took the train to Boston. So that's the story. But there are a lot of things we can do in economic development. We're giving away the shop in terms of $63,000 subsidies for each job, that type of thing.
Yeah.
We don't need to do subsidies. And if I were talking to Amazon, and if you elect me governor, I will talk to Amazon. I'll make a very strong case, and it won't be the fleet building covered with mirrors, which only houses 3,000 employees, by the way.
Yeah.
They got 50,000 they want to bring here. But one of the points is going to be, we're going to change the state and make it more welcoming, and we're going to address the regulatory issues that matter. And you know, we're not going to try to buy you. You're going to come here because you want to. We're not going to give you 10 cents in tax breaks.
Are you the strongest pro-business governor?
Well, thank you for putting it that way. I'm probably the one that met the most payrolls and probably wrote the most checks for Blue Cross. Every one of my never had a big payroll, you know, 8
Right.
or 10, 12 at the most, but everybody got free 100% Blue Cross because that's what you should do.
Yep.
But that's not a burden that should be on the employee when he or she moves to another location, or on the employer. We need what France has, what Canada has, which is a universal healthcare system. We're not that bad in terms of coverage right now, but why should we be spending 25% or 35% of our money on clerical and insurance company profits? This needs to change. And this is something that the governor's office can do.
Is that the next revolution? You just saw, you know, in the fall, the announcement of CVS and Aetna merging. Now you're seeing other reactions to that. You saw Amazon plus JP Morgan plus Berkshire Hathaway talk about a self-insurance, healthcare self-insurance policy. Are we going to see the next big disruption in our economy being one of both healthcare and health insurance?
Well, the disruption in the state's economy, or
I think of all economies across the country.
well,
is that
you
the
know,
next
I
big?
don't, I hadn't really thought of it from that point of view, but it's going to be a potentially disruptive process. You got a lot of people who are, in effect, working in the clerical aspect of healthcare where they really should not be. They should
Right.
be healthcare providers, doctors, nurses,
Sure.
technicians, whatever. And then there's the as you mentioned, the combination of Aetna and CVS. That's a problem because they're getting entrenched, and we have to tell them nicely that this doesn't work.
Right.
And when their board meets, they have their number one job. Of course, they've got to provide a good product, and we love their product. But their number one product is profits for their shareholders. And we have to redirect that because it really isn't working. Too much of our personal income and too much of our economy is going into this private healthcare system that we have that needs to change. The financing of it needs to be public.
Let's go rapid fire on some issues.
Are you going to give me a chance to criticize my opponents, or do that
we're,
next time?
we're not like that here.
Oh, too nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's go around some issues because you know this is the first chance folks have gotten a chance to meet
By the way, I
you.
love the studio. I'm looking out of a picture window, and I can see across the street to a couple of parking lots, and it's way Boston Street.
Superman
It's beautiful.
building, Paolino's new
They
project
can't see
over
us.
there.
I guess there's a screen on the
Yeah,
window.
we've
But
got it.
I'm looking at a picture window of Providence.
So let's talk about it. Kate Nagel just left to go cover the Providence City Plan Commission, taking up the Fane Tower, 46-story, $250 to $300 million, functionally private investment. He'll get the 195 commission incentives, but he's not asking for anything more. Good project or bad?
I think the governor should probably have a conversation with Fane and say, you know, we're helping you, we're on your side, but really, is that really what's best for our city? You know, the first house I ever built was on a quarter-acre lot.
Yeah.
It wasn't 600 feet high.
It was not 600 feet.
No.
Well,
So maybe we ought to give them another quarter-acre lot and make it half as high. And you know, and I know this is but seriously, where's the fire truck that has the 600-foot ladder?
well, you know, it's funny. We asked him about that, and he said, and it's been substantiated, including by Paul Dowdy, head of the Providence Firefighter Union. You know, modern construction of those types of buildings, the fire protection and suppression assets are so much superior to buildings a third, a fifth the size that are now in existence. That's not really generally
But when
the
you
big.
drive by the building and it stands by itself and it's the
Sure.
biggest thing in the city,
Yeah.
you're still going to get that feeling. There's something a little too big about that building.
Too big.
Could be.
PawSox financing, $40 million to the ownership group.
Nobody wants to do this, and nobody in the Speaker's District, District 15, apparently wants to do this. Here's the problem, and it's the problem with our governor, Gina Raimondo. She should show some leadership. She should sit down with the owners of the PawSox, and she should say, what's really the best deal we can get from you?
Right.
And when she does this, she should have done some research. She should know the owner of every single piece of property that might be in that downtown renewal area.
Yep.
And she ought to know she ought to find out if there's a buy-sell agreement. She ought to look them in the eye and say, who really owns that property? Who's going to buy it if this deal goes through?
Right.
What's the real value of this deal? What are we going to do with the old stadium? She or some leader needs to do that and then bring it back to the people. Is it a $15 million contribution? Maybe they can build 2/3 of the stadium, like adding the family room later.
Yep.
Maybe the luxury features, if it catches on, if it does what we hope it does, they can come in a couple of years. We don't have to spend the whole nut in the first year. So what she needs to do is to bring back to the people a proposal. Do you want to spend $15 million? Will you support a bond issue? And that raises the issue of moral obligation bonds.
Yep.
Don't get me started on that. They
All right,
are
let's jump
totally
over.
illegal.
$250 million bond before the voters, in all likelihood, this year to improve schools across the state.
Every school,
yay or nay?
of course, should be warm, safe, and dry.
Yep.
I don't think every school should be new. And one of the things that public employees and teachers are very well aware of, painfully aware, is that when the state takes on bond obligations,
Yep.
that puts a strain on the budget, because it's like a home mortgage. You know, you can mortgage anything you want, but you're going to have to pay that mortgage. And in future years, we're going to have to pay off those bonds. So every time you do $1 billion in bonding,
Yep.
you are stressing the budget to the point where there are no raises for the public employees. And the public employees just supposedly got a 4-part raise. It's not even keeping up with inflation. It doesn't even cover the inflation since the last raise. We're not treating our public employees fairly. You know, and that reminds me of the pension issue. In 2011, we changed pensions in Rhode Island. I believe we broke a contract.
Yep.
And there were two things you have to do to break a contract legally. One is you have to have a compelling need, and the other thing you have to have is no plausible alternative.
Right.
We had alternatives. I proposed a bill the night that the pension reform was passed. They didn't even want to hear it. Gordon Fox gavelled me quiet. We need to revisit that issue. One of the reasons is, number one, it was illegal. Number two, it was unfair. But most important, we're going to have to hire a whole new generation of public employees in a tough market. We have to have credibility, and we have to offer something in the compensation package. Those COLAs need to come back.
All right, let's go to Providence Water Supply Board. Should it be sold?
That's a terrible idea. Have you ever been out to Situate and looked at the building? And
I have been there many a time.
It's
I'm
a beautiful.
former Providence City Councilman.
Well, you go in the front room and it looks like the CIA headquarters. A beautiful brass plaque right in the middle. And a couple of years, I don't know, maybe 6, 8 years ago, they did a complete refurbishment of their system without a bond issue. This organization was well run for a long time. If you had to replace it, it would probably be, you couldn't, because, you know, where's the land going to come from?
Yeah.
But if you had to replace it, it would be $1 billion. I believe that there's a buyer out there that would pay that for it. That's a terrible idea. But let's not, number one, let's not undervalue it, because when you undervalue it, there's plenty of potential for shenanigans and...
You're anti-shenanigans.
I am the anti-shenanigan candidate. That's right.
And
I mean it, too, because
On
I
you,
know what I'm
should
talking
Deloitte
about.
be fired?
You know, I'd have to take a closer look at that. Is there something to salvage? But as you said, maybe there's another state that has a program. I'm going to say they probably should be fired.
Yeah. Superman building, let's just say it's $100 million to rehab that building. Some say that's on the conservative level based on the appraisal done by Scotty and Associates 3 or 4 years ago. But let's just say it's $100 million. To resurrect that building, should we taxpayers, through whatever financing scheme, put in as much as $50 million?
I don't think so, and I don't think we have to either. I think when they shut down the building, essentially they chased Bank of America fleet out of there. Bank of America fleet, I believe, could have been convinced to stay in 1/3 of the building. We still have people coming down and, you know, buying coffee over at Tommy's,
Yep.
which they used to do. we chased them away. And I think the reason we, or the people that own the building, chased them away, because they thought, well, we'll do a little refurbishment here.
Yeah.
And maybe if we hire the right lobbyist, we can get the legislature to drive a dump truck over to our place and dump $35 million in our yard.
Right.
No, we don't need to do that. We didn't need to do it then. We don't need to do it now. I don't know whether, I don't know who's going to buy the building. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not even sure who still owns it. But I think the value is there, and I don't think that the refurbishment is $100 million.
Let's jump over. Let's go to the last one.
By the way, as a builder, you want a builder for your governor, because anytime somebody proposes a project, whether it's a school or the Fleet building, I'm going to walk around and I'm going to say, show me the asbestos, show me the rust. I want to see it.
Yeah.
And, getting back to the school issue, we could have state employees and teams re-roofing all of our schools. We don't have to spend $1 billion. They got to be warm, safe, and dry. But let's not go overboard with this.
U.S. Supreme Court yesterday in the Christie versus NCAA opened up the door for states to
This is
expand.
the issue I was hoping you wouldn't ask me about.
Okay, and that's it. No, sports betting for each of the states. The governor's got $23.5 million penciled in, or actually penned into the fiscal year 2019 budget. Is this a good idea? This is a big expansion.
Well, it's probably going to happen. It's moving fast. It's
Yep.
on skids, and we're probably going to see it. I'm not sure that I like it in the first place.
Yeah.
And I'm darn sure I wouldn't have put 23 or whatever it was, 24 million in the budget, assuming that I knew the outcome of a Supreme Court decision. I don't understand how that works.
So if we get the books expanded where we're like in London where they bet on everything, what color shoes the Queen is wearing today or something like that, what's the Providence line on Spencer Dickinson winning the governorship in 2018?
The over and the under on that.
Yeah.
Let's just say that I want to quote Bernie, who said something a couple of years ago. He said, "Don't underestimate me." Now there's the bright shiny object. There's Matt Brown. He's in the race.
Yep.
Gina's got $4 million. She's going to have 30 field officers. She's already hired all my friends.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I don't have that many, but she's already hired them as poll workers and field operators.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. But
Yep.
the thing is, I've read, there's a very important thing. This is, if anybody wants to take something away from this show, there's a study that shows that the most you can get, no matter how much money you have, is 4 or 5%, because people are paying attention. And I think in Rhode Island right now, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Are you going to vote for a candidate that's trying to buy your vote? Well, some of the people might, and that's where the 4 or 5% comes from. So if she's at 35, we're not sure that's true. Maybe she can go to 40. So there's 60% left. Now, we got 3 Democratic candidates in the race right now, and who knows how that's going to work out.
Sure.
But I'm in it.
A last word from you, and then I'll wrap up.
Josh, thank you for putting me on the air. I appreciate it. I hope I get a chance to come back.
Absolutely.
A great studio, great business you have here, and a real model for what people ought to be doing in this state. Doing it right here at the local level.
All right. Spencer Dickinson, Democratic candidate for governor in the state of Rhode Island, former legislator, a real watchdog when he was in there. It's good experience as an environmentalist, good government person, and also in the business industry. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Stay tuned. Kate Nagel will be going live any moment now from the hearing on the Fane Tower as well. You can tune into that. I want to thank everybody. We had a busy, busy day with an amazing musical event here this afternoon, the Alex and Ani Lounge. Tomorrow, we've got the Taste at 3 o'clock. Kate Nagel's got 4 o'clock. On Thursday, we're at the State House at 3 o'clock. But then at night, we've got Where is America Going? We've got Mike Sheehan, the former president of the Boston Globe, coming into town. We've got Jim Murphy, former political director of the Trump campaign, will be in town. We'll be broadcasting that live over at the new pavilion at Grace Church. You can still sign up for that. There's very limited seating, or you can watch it live on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. We are out today.
Josh, thank you very much
Absolutely.
for the opportunity. I'm going to get my
It's great.
coffee. I'm going to get my
It's great.
coffee. I'm going to get my
It's great.
coffee. I'm going to get my
It's great.
coffee.